Interest groups are often cast as villains in the political process, but they're also praised as champions of democracy. How can both of these statements be true? In this video, we're going to explore the role of interest groups in American politics. There's a lot to unpack, so let's get to it. There are more than 100,000 interest groups active in Washington, D.C. But what exactly are they and what do they do? Interest groups, which are sometimes also called pressure or advocacy groups, are organized collections of individuals or organizations that seek to influence public policy and decision-making in favor of their specific interests or causes. Interest groups are an integral part of the American political landscape, reflecting a wide range of interests, including economic, environmental, consumer, religious, and civil rights concerns. We can divide interest groups into several basic categories, largely based on their focus. Economic interest groups are concerned primarily with financial benefits for their members. They include trade associations representing business, labor unions for workers, and professional organizations for practitioners in fields like medicine, law, and engineering. Their primary focus is on influencing economic policies such as taxation, trade, labor laws, and regulations that might affect their members' economic interests. Examples of economic interest groups might include the AFL-CIO, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, or the National Association of Manufacturers. Ideological interest groups are motivated by a specific set of beliefs or ideologies. They advocate for policies and laws that align with their ideological viewpoints, which can be conservative, liberal, environmental, religious, or otherwise. Their focus is broader and may not directly benefit the members financially, but rather seeks to promote a broader ideological or moral agenda. Examples of ideological interest groups include the Sierra Club, the National Rifle Association, or Planned Parenthood. Professional interest groups represent the interests of individuals in the same profession or trade. They focus on issues like professional standards, advancing the status and interests of the profession, and protecting their members' interests. They often concentrate on issues such as licensing, regulation, professional training standards, and promoting professional ethics. Examples of professional groups might include the American Medical Association, the American Bar Association, or the National Education Association. Finally, public interest groups claim to work for the good of the entire community, not just one part of it. They advocate for issues they believe will benefit the larger society or address societal problems. Their focus is on policy changes that are perceived as promoting the public good, such as environmental protection, consumer rights, or human rights. Examples of such groups might include Common Cause, Public Citizen, or the Consumers Union. Interest groups engage in a variety of activities to influence public opinion and to achieve their respective goals. They often directly lobby government officials and legislators attempting to influence policy decisions. Lobbyists provide information, draft legislation, and advocate for specific outcomes that benefit their interest groups. They may testify in legislative hearings, meet with lawmakers or their staff, and sometimes even help draft legislation. Interest groups also try to shape public opinion, aiming to use popular opinion to exert indirect pressure on policymakers who are sensitive to their constituents' viewpoints. This often involves arguing for a particular cause or policy, but can take a variety of forms, including publishing research, conducting public awareness and media campaigns, and organizing events or protests with the goal of creating favorable environments for their policy goals. Sometimes interest groups establish PACs or political action committees, which collect funds to contribute to political candidates, parties, and campaigns that support their objectives. Through PACs, interest groups can directly support candidates who advocate for their interests, increasing the likelihood that their policy preferences are enacted. Or they can use their PACs to spend money on advertising campaigns directly, operating at an arm's length from specific candidates. Other interest groups will engage in grassroots mobilization in an effort to mobilize the general public or specific segments of the population to support an interest group's goals. Such mobilization can take a variety of forms, including organizing rallies, petition drives, letter-writing campaigns, and other activities that demonstrate widespread public support for the group's objectives. Interest groups may often form coalitions with other interest groups that share similar objectives to amplify their influence. This can include joint lobbying efforts, co-sponsoring events, and unified public relations campaigns. By working together, groups can pool their resources, expertise, and members to have a greater impact than they might have individually. Some groups use the courts to influence public policy, bringing lawsuits or financing legal challenges to existing laws or regulations. They may directly sue a government entity, finance a lawsuit, or file a brief that informs the court of their position. Successful litigation can lead to significant changes in policy, especially if it results in landmark court decisions. Finally, interest groups often conduct and disseminate research and analysis to inform the public and policymakers about issues related to their interests. By publishing reports, holding conferences, or providing expert testimony in legislative or administrative hearings, interest groups can influence the policy debate and provide valuable information that shapes legislation and regulation. Each of these represents a different strategy that interest groups can use to achieve their goals. In reality, they often use a combination of these activities depending upon their resources, the political context, and the issue at hand. Through these various activities, interest groups have both positive and negative impacts on politics and government, reflecting their complex role in democratic society. On the positive side, interest groups provide a means for individuals and organizations to voice their concerns and become actively involved in the political process, ensuring a diverse range of interests are represented and heard in the political arena beyond those of just political parties and individual politicians. Many interest groups possess specialized knowledge and expertise that they can provide to legislatures and government officials, contributing to a more informed and effective policymaking process. They often conduct research and generate data that can help in understanding complex issues and crafting appropriate legislative responses. Interest groups raise awareness about various issues, educating the public and stimulating public discussion and debate. By mobilizing citizens, they can foster a more engaged and informed electorate. By monitoring government actions and advocating for transparency, interest groups can help hold government officials accountable to the public. They often play a critical role in exposing corruption, advocating for ethical standards, and ensuring that the government remains responsive to the citizens' needs and concerns. And finally, interest groups can introduce new ideas and perspectives into the political discourse, promoting innovation and diversity in policy options. They can bring attention to overlooked issues and minority viewpoints, enriching the democratic debate. But on the negative side, some groups, especially those with more financial resources, can have disproportionate influence over politics and policy, leading to unequal representation. Wealthy interests and corporations might dominate the policy agenda at the expense of less well-off or minority interests. Further, when interest groups aggressively push their agendas, they can contribute to political polarization and gridlock. Competing interests may lead to stalemates where no compromise is reached, hindering effective governance and the passage of necessary legislation. Interest groups often focus on narrow, short-term goals, which may not always align with the long-term public interest. This can lead to policies that favor specific groups but are detrimental or insufficiently attentive to broader societal needs. The vast number of interest groups and the range of issues they address can overwhelm policymakers and lead to scattered attention. As a result, important issues might receive inadequate focus or resources, and the policy agenda can become fragmented. Finally, some interest groups operate with a lack of transparency, particularly in their funding and lobbying activities. This opacity can lead to questions about whose interests they're truly serving and whether they're contributing to corruption or undue influence in government. Interest groups might thus be thought of as a double-edged sword in American politics. On the one hand, they're vital for interest representation, democratic participation, and informed policymaking. But on the other hand, they can lead to unequal influence, policy gridlock, and a focus on narrow interests at the expense of the public good. But that's it for now. Please leave any questions you have in the comments section below, and thanks for watching.